You are listening to the podcast for learning the language of A Course in Miracles so you can understand the meaning, embody the message, and live the teachings as a way of life. Welcome to episode 54 of this podcast. I'm your host, Reverend Jennifer McSween, creator of this podcast, and the Course in Miracles practice coach for taking those who are studying the course from information to application. This week's episode is workbook lesson number 3, and the title is I do not understand anything I see in this room, on this street, from this window, or in this place. This is another solid argument in the Course's case that states there is no hierarchy among illusions, that supports that idea and helps us to understand a little bit more why this is so. Remember, the Course rests on the idea that it's the way we look at the world, our perception, that determines the way we experience the world. And the perception that is generally held by the world and about the world is that it is real, and by extension, so is everything in it. And based on this perception, then, we think we know and understand the things that we see and what they're for. And we think they have value and meaning in and of themselves, and that the purpose of anything is based on whether it serves the purpose in some form in the world or the purpose that we perceive it to serve in the world. This perception, or as the Course suggests, misperception, causes us to see and experience ourselves as victims of the world. And it is this perception of victimization that we experience in all forms of fear, sickness, lack, injustice, or the feeling of being unfairly treated in any way. These early lessons are designed to do two things. One, to help us become aware that we have misperceived the world and that there is another way of looking at or perceiving it. And two, to begin to recognize the illusory nature of the world and how to relate to it as an illusion. So in stating, I do not understand anything I see in this room, on this street, from this window, or in this place, Lesson 3 is telling us why the idea presented in Lesson 1's title, that nothing I see in any form means anything, and in Lesson 2, that I have given everything I see all the meaning that it has for me, are valid. What this lesson is telling us, or what it wants us to learn, is that we give value and meaning to the world and the things of the world, and think we understand the world and the things of the world because we are accepting the ego's perception of the world as real and having purpose. But we do not understand that the ego's underlying ultimate purpose for having us see the world as real and everything in it as having value, meaning, and purpose is really to keep us rooted in the illusion and experiencing everything that takes place in the world and in our lives as unquestionably real. So this lesson, like all the other early lessons in the workbook, is having us dig up, uncover, bring to the surface those underlying ego perceptions in very much the same way that projective tests are used by psychologists to help understand the underlying dynamics of a person's psychological disorder. And this is one of the things that makes A Course in Miracles a very effective form of spiritual psychotherapy. Let me give you an example of what I mean. In this case, we are the patient or the client. And the psychological disorder in question is that we see ourselves as victims of the world, in that the generally held perception is that of us against the world. It would be hard-pressed to find one person who does not think that life gives them a certain lot or that they're given a certain lot in life. You often hear expressions such as, you have to play the hand that life has dealt you, meaning that you come into this world and you have a certain path or certain things happen to you, and that's it, and you have to work with it. So, as a result of that perception, we experience ourselves and our lives in the world in some form of pain, conflict, struggle, or misery, because again, it's like it's us against the world. And the Course wants us to realize that you're experiencing anything in a specific way is not caused by the world or anything in it, but has only one cause: your perception. And that is the underlying dynamics of our psychological disorder that is manifesting in the different forms of misery in our lives. The Course, as a form of spiritual psychotherapy, is to help us realize that we cannot be victimized by the world, nor by anything in it. By changing our perception or shifting our perception of the world so that we recognize its illusory nature. The misperception or ego perception this lesson intends to correct is therefore the perception that the world is real. And more specifically, that we can change the quality of our experience or get anything to improve ourselves or the quality of experience or our relationships or our lives in some way by doing or having or experiencing certain things in the world, or vice versa, that the way we feel, who we become, and the quality of our relationships and our lives can be equally and adversely affected by what we do have an experience in the world. So this lesson is another step that gently leads us along the path of dismantling the ego's perception of the world as real, and that there is an hierarchy among illusions. So in this lesson, we're being asked again to practice somewhat indiscriminately, and by merely noticing, paying attention without judgment, when we find ourselves thinking that we understand anything or something in particular, and we're being introduced to the idea that we could let go of what we think we know and understand, and become open and willing to consider the central teaching the Course wants us to learn, which is that there is another way of looking at the world that would lead you to a better, a more peaceful experience of the world. This way, we begin to question the veracity and the nature of the ego itself. So as we practice this lesson, we are to keep an open mind as we look at all things and realize how little we really understand about them. And above all, to recognize the inherent sameness in everything. Because given that they're all part of the world, and the world is an illusion, they are all the same. Because an illusion is an illusion is an illusion. Workbook lesson number 4 addresses our thoughts and how they relate to the world of illusion. And that will be next week's topic. So that's it for this week. Thank you for listening to this episode of Understanding the Language of A Course in Miracles podcast. If you enjoyed this episode or found it helpful, please share it with those you know through whatever means or platform to which you have access. And leave me a review on iTunes so that others can hear about it, enjoy it, and find it helpful also. And if you have not yet subscribed, please do so you don't miss another episode. Thanks again for listening, and see you on the podcast next Wednesday.